Welcome back to Hold Fast, where we have biblical truths for daily battles. My name is Kenny. I'm the host of the podcast, and today I'm going to talk about a subject that, for me, right now in my life, is hitting close to home. Something that I have not only been thinking about for the last 5 or 6 months, but I've actually been specifically working on in my own life. It's really in my top 3 things right now that I'm working on, and many days it feels like it's number 1 in my life that I'm working on these days. Something that I've struggled with. It's been a weakness of mine for many, many years, and that's the area of productivity and personal organization, if you will. And you may be tempted to turn off this episode right here because you may think that you're a productive person, but maybe you're the kind of person that you need encouragement in this area. Maybe you need to be challenged in the why behind your productivity. Why do you desire to be productive? And maybe this episode can serve as a small help to you in thinking about some other things you hadn't considered in being productive and being organized with your time and being on top of things and accomplishing more for the glory of God. Maybe you're like me and you do tend to be disorganized. And for me, I had written it off as it was a personality trait, right? Like that's just who I am. I use the phrase, I fly by the seat of my pants pretty often. I'm just kind of come day, go day, whatever happens, I'll face it and I'll deal with it. It's not that I haven't been driven or that I haven't accomplished things or that I don't work hard. It's that I've not been organized and thoughtful in my approach. I've not really been as productive as I can be, right? Maybe you're like me and you desire to be more productive, but you tend to be so busy and yet you don't feel like you're accomplishing a whole lot. I don't know if you feel like that. I think a lot of us feel like that in these days, right? Because busyness is almost considered a virtue in our culture, even though it shouldn't be necessarily. And we're so hurried and we're so frantic all the time. We're so involved in so many different areas. And we can get at the end of the day having done a million things, but feel like we didn't accomplish a single thing. And I think that there are some things that I'm going to share that might be helpful for you in this conversation on that. Maybe you struggle with laziness. Maybe you tend to be a lazier person, that it's hard for you to be motivated. It's not something that you just kind of naturally wake up every single day and say, I'm gonna go get it. And you want to be. You don't necessarily want to be lazy, but you need some strategies to help you think through this. You need some truths to help you think through this. I hope that today's episode will be helpful for you. And if you fall anywhere in between any of those categories, I hope today's episode is helpful for you as well. So let's talk about productivity from a biblical standpoint. So first and foremost, we need to understand that we have been created by God and for God, okay? We need to understand that we are not our own. Our lives are not about us and the things that we can accomplish, right? We've been created by God, and we've been created in Christ Jesus for good works that God prepared beforehand for us to do. That's Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, right? So God actually has work for us to do, and that obviously is spiritual in nature, but I believe there are many things in our lives that God has created for us to do that we might not consider to be ultra spiritual things necessarily. Because let's remember something, that God created work before the fall happened, right? He created Adam and Eve. They were perfect in the Garden of Eden. There was no sin that had entered into the world yet. And yet he told them to work and to tend the garden, right? Work is a good thing. It was something that God instituted even before the fall. God is a God who works and creates, and he's created us in his image to image him in so many things, and I believe work is one of those things. And then we have the challenge that maybe comes to all of our minds when we think about making the best use of our time and being productive. It's Ephesians chapter 6, verses 15 and 16. Paul says, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time because the days are evil." Some translations say redeeming the time because the days are evil, right? We need to be careful how we live our lives. We need to plan our days. We need to make sure that we're organized and we're thinking through the ways that we spend our time. We need to make the best use of the time because the days are evil, and we can so easily be caught up in laziness or sinful activity. We can so easily be caught up in doing things that may not necessarily be bad things, but they're not the best things. They're not the things that we need to be focused on. And so we need a clear understanding of the reason for productivity. We need to be desiring to get more things done and get them done faithfully and get them done in an organized way and with productivity for the glory of God. So maybe a word, maybe you don't like the word productivity, right? You go, that's kind of a weird word for Christians to use, right? We use that in the workforce and everybody wants to be more productive and get more things done. That's just something that sounds a little bit too secular. So let's use the word fruitfulness, right? That's the biblical word. We can use the word fruitfulness, productivity, whatever word you want to use. We're called to be fruitful for the glory of God. And that doesn't just include making sure you read your Bible and pray in the mornings and go to church, right? I believe it includes all of life. I believe God desires for us to be fruitful and productive in all the areas, all the spheres of our life that He's called us to, right? He's called us to be husbands and wives and fathers and mothers and children and students and employees and employers. He's called us to all these different areas of life. We need to make sure that we're faithful in all of them, that we're seeking to be fruitful in all of them. This is a biblical idea of productivity, right? The scripture is clear that whether we eat or drink or whatever we do, we need to be doing it for the glory of God. And I've become convicted in my own life that when we just kind of let the days pass us by and we're not intentional and we're not really seeking to be organized and productive, we're not really doing things to the best of our ability for the glory of God in those times. It's been convicting for me. I used to make so many excuses in my life, right? I mean, it would drive people around me crazy because, I forget things all the time, and I still do that, even though I'm trying to be more organized. And, but I've not been diligent, right? I've not really been intentional of becoming a more organized person. And I believe that my family has suffered because of it. I believe in some ways my ministry has suffered because of it. I believe that this has affected so many areas of my life. And I finally was woken up to this reality and began to implement some changes. And so it's been, like I said, kind of a personal journey for me, and I'm by no means on the other side of this. I'm still in the thick of this. I still struggle with this. I still got a lot of work to do. So this is really just me from the trenches of this struggle, sharing some of the things that I'm beginning to learn. And I hope that maybe I can do future episodes as I learn more and as I maybe get better at this and can share more insights as I go along. So I'll actually share some resources at the end of the podcast today. Some books that you can go to, some things that hopefully will be helpful for you as you think about this area of your life. So I did want this episode to be really practical, okay? I just spent a few minutes talking about the biblical principles for productivity, and I think that's so important. I think that we can't just be a people that say, well, I just want to get a lot more done because I want to be really successful. I want to be really productive. I just want to feel good about myself and the things that I'm doing. That's not the motivation for productivity. The motivation for productivity is the glory of God. It's being fruitful, faithful servants with the things that the Lord has given us. He's given you life and breath and skills and spiritual gifts, and He's given you spheres of influence, and He's given you jobs and careers. He's given you a family. He's given you all of these things for you to be a steward of. Are you faithfully stewarding them? Can you really stand before the Lord and say, Lord, I am to the best of my ability faithfully stewarding the people and resources that you have placed into my life? I'm being fruitful and faithful as much as possible with your help, with your grace, with your strength. I'm really seeking to be a fruitful and faithful servant and steward of these things. And if you think that you're probably failing in some of those areas, as we all are, and if you're realizing that you need a lot of work in this area, as many of us, probably most of us do, then I hope that you'll listen in, and I hope that this will be practical. So what I don't want to do is share, the things that I do in my life and have you think that what you need to do is copy all of the things that I'm doing. I'm going to share some specifics, but I also want you to just get some of the principles from this and to let your mind go to, okay, how can I make that work for me? Okay, that's what I've done. I'll share a book with you a little bit later on the episode that really has been helpful for me because he gives some really practical things that he does. And I'm reading some other books from people who talk about productivity, and I'm taking a lot of things from what they do, but I'm really making it my own, okay? And so a lot of this is stuff that I've gotten from other people, and I'm kind of adapting to my own needs here, okay? This is not just everything that I've come up with. I didn't sit down one day and say, you know what, I'm going to be more productive, and I just became more productive. And that was part of my problem, right? Is I've always known this has been an issue, and I've really tried to fix it, but I've never had a real plan, and I've never had anybody really help me with this until I sought out help specifically for this. So I'm not going to cover everything. I'm not going to say everything you need to hear. I'm not going to give you every tip that you need in just a short episode, but I hope to kind of start the fire, if you will, in your mind and your heart to get you thinking about these things and to encourage you in your productivity. So one of the first things that was revolutionary for me was crafting a morning routine. Now, I'm nowhere near perfect in this. This is not something that I have done every single day. It's my aspiration to do it every single day. But here's the concept for me, and you're going to think I'm crazy at first, so stick with me. My goal is to get up at 4:30 in the morning and to spend an hour and a half to 2 hours before anybody else really wakes up and gets stirring in the house, and really focusing in on my time with the Lord, okay? That's key. That is foundational. So I spend time in the Word and in prayer. I spend time exercising and working out because it's really hard for me to find time in the day to do that otherwise. And I spend some time reading some other books. Sometimes I'll spend time doing maybe a work task that I need to get done before the day starts. And then I will spend time intentionally planning my day as well. So I'll spend some time thinking about what I have in front of me and how I can be the most faithful steward of the things in front of me for that day. So that's my morning routine, right? And it does require getting up. For me, it requires getting up around 4:30, because if I want to do all of that, that's a lot to try to pack into like just an hour. So I need a little bit more time, and it means going to bed earlier because we can't sacrifice our sleep and our rest for just getting up early, right? Because then you're going to really suffer. You got to still get some rest. You got to still make sure that you're taking care of yourself. But I've made the decision that it's important for me to get up early. And again, I don't always do this well. I enjoy sleep like the rest of you. It's not super easy, but I've never done it and not been thankful that I got up. I've never done it and felt like it was a waste of time. How could it be a waste of time when we're spending time with the Lord and we're being intentional about thinking about our day and exercising and all these things? How could that be a waste of time? So a morning routine is crucial. It really sets the tone for the day. It really actually helps you start off in an organized sense. And more importantly, it helps you start off with your mind and your heart set on the Lord. And if you do that, then you're going to desire to be fruitful. You're going to desire to be a good steward that day if you begin your time, you begin your day with the Lord, seeking how to please Him and honor Him and organizing your day and getting ready for the day ahead. So that's really important as a morning routine. The next step, and this one has taken maybe the most work so far on my part, is getting organized. And what I mean by that is organizing everything in my life. So I actually use an app called Notion, Notion with an N, Notion. It's a fantastic app. I could spend a whole episode talking about Notion, but it's been a great tool for me. Everything in my life is on Notion. So notes for work, passwords that I need, ideas that I have, goals that I have, notes from meetings that I have. I'm taking notes on the books that I'm reading in there. I'm doing my sermon prep notes in there. All of my projects, everything that I have to do, my to-do list, all the projects that I have are in there. Everything that comes across my mind that I go, I should do that or I should think about that goes in Notion. And it's something that I'm reminded of because I know I'm always going to check it, right? I know that I'm always going to be looking at that and staying organized. That was key for me. Another key for me and my family really in getting organized has been a shared calendar. It seems almost silly for me to say, but we've never really done that. We've tried to talk about things and try to share things here and there, but we actually have, my wife and I specifically have a calendar that we share when it's an event that involves the two of us or it's an event that both of us need to know about for some reason. It goes on the shared calendar. I don't put all of my meetings as a pastor on there because my wife doesn't have to see all of those, but if I have something that's going to affect her in any way, it goes on the calendar and vice versa. That's been really key. Getting organized is so important. So this even bled into, I organized my desk at work, and I'm trying to organize different areas of my life. And we're going to spend some time organizing different rooms in our home, right? I think that's helpful and useful from a productivity standpoint, from having a clear mind and making sure you know where things are and making sure you're on top of things. So get organized. I used to say I'm not a note-taking person. I'm not a calendar person, but I need to be one, right? That may not be something that I love doing, but it's something that's very important for me to do, to be on top of things. And I'll tell you what, for years in my life, I've said, that's just not me, right? I'm just not the organized person. I can't I don't write things down. I'm just going to remember it. First of all, I'm not going to remember it. Second of all, the more that I've done it, the more I've enjoyed it. The more that I've begun to lean into it and to really utilize this tool, because it's been incredible. It's not an overstatement for me to say that it's been transformative. It really has changed my approach to life and work and family and ministry. It's really helped me. And I'm excited because I'm just a few months in and I've got so much more to improve. And so I know that the Lord is going to be able to use this time to make me more fruitful and a more faithful steward. And I'm excited for that. So it's been really good to get organized and get on top of things. I think you should set goals. Again, this is not something that's a natural tendency for me, but you should think about the things that you want to see in your life 5 to 10 years from now and just write them down and look at that every so often and make sure that you're doing things to work towards those goals. I think a really key thing for me was to consider my vocations and my callings in life. And here's what I mean by that. I looked in my life and I said, here are the areas of influence. Here are the areas of importance for me, right? I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a preacher and a pastor. I'm a godly friend to the people around me. I'm a son and a family member to my extended family, right? I'm all of these things. So I think about all of these vocations, I prioritize them, and I wrote under each of these vocations things that I desire to do, things that are goals for me to do, and things that are principles for me. So we're going to make sure that my wife and I have a weekly check-in once a week, right? We check in with each other spiritually, emotionally. We check in each other with each other with our calendars. We make sure that we're in sync, that we are talking, we're communicating well, and we're spending some time together, right? When I think about my responsibilities as a father, I want to make sure that I'm prioritizing dinner time and bedtime routines. I want to make sure that I'm finding ways to pray with them and to do family worship and to memorize scripture with them and all these things, right, that are important. And the list goes on and on. But spend some time, get out a notebook, get out an app. Evernote is where I started with this, and then I moved it to Notion. And write down all of the areas of callings in your life, whether you're a husband or a wife, a mother, father. What's your occupation? What's your career path? Are you responsible for other people in any way? What are your spheres of influence that the Lord has called you to, and how can you be faithful to those? How can you organize those by priority, and how can you be faithful to those vocations and those callings on a daily basis? That is a really, really important thing to consider as you think about getting organized, as you think about being more productive in life. Because if you don't set your priorities, you're going to be a slave to what seems urgent in the moment. But now that I know my priorities and I have them written down, when I look at a week when it gets really busy, I can go, you know what? This thing over here is important, but it's lower on the scale for me than the things that are absolutely most important. And if I'm going to choose anything, I'm going to choose what's most important, right? And I've always known this. I'm not saying this is a new concept for me, but I've never written it down and really been intentional with it before. I've just always hoped that it would happen because I think that way and I believe that way. But I've had to get intentional. And I think that you should consider doing that as well if you have not already. I knew this would probably be a little bit longer of an episode because I had a lot to get through. And truthfully, I've barely scratched the surface. So I'll just tell you, if this episode is helpful and encouraging to you, I really want to hear from you, because if you want more content like this episode, please tell me. Please let me know, because when I hear from you, I actually take that into account, and I may do more episodes along this line if it would be helpful to you. But let me conclude with this. 4 books that have been really helpful to me. One of them I haven't read yet, so I'm saying they're helpful to me, but I've been recommended it by others, and I'm actually going to an event this week with the author, so I may be able to report back and tell you just how good this book is, but I'm going to throw it out there anyways. The first book is where this all started for me. It's a book called Redeeming Productivity. Redeeming Productivity by Reagan Rose. I'll put a link to all these books in the description for the episode today. This book was absolutely incredible. It's short. It's easy to read. He gives biblical principles for productivity, and then he gives practical steps for actually applying this into your life. If you read Redeeming Productivity and you listen to this podcast episode, you'll be able to see just how heavily this book has influenced the way that I think about these things. I think he does a phenomenal job. The author's name is Reagan Rose. It's Redeeming Productivity. I would highly recommend you get that book. The next book is Do More Better by Tim Challies. Tim Challies actually wrote the foreword to Redeeming Productivity that I just mentioned, and is somebody who really is just so solid and practical when it comes to the subject of productivity and faithfulness as a Christian. So that's Do More Better by Tim Challies. The other book is Redeeming Your Time by Jordan Raynor. That's the book I haven't read yet. Redeeming Your Time by Jordan Raynor. I've heard good things about it. I think it's I heard him do a podcast interview with Reagan Rose from Redeeming Productivity. I think he's somebody that I can recommend you read on that resource. So Redeeming Your Time by Jordan Raynor. And the final book is Getting Things Done. Getting Things Done by David Allen. Sorry, I literally was blanking on the title there, even though I've read the book and I've been really benefiting from it. But Getting Things Done by David Allen, it's a classic resource. It is a secular resource. So I will tell you, I don't agree with all of his motivations for work, but I think if there's ever a book that gets into the nitty gritty of what it means to be productive, it's that book. And I would highly recommend that book to you, Getting Things Done by David Allen, if you have not read that already. Wow. I feel like I just drank from a fire hydrant. I don't know about you. That was a lot of information, a lot to cover, a lot to go through in such a short time. So again, if this is helpful, if you like more content like this, please let me know. I may share more content like this anyway, because this is just kind of a journey that I'm on, as I said. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you, to hearing how this has been encouraging to you or not. I would love to hear that as well. If you're like, spend less time on that and go back to the other things, I'm fine with that too. But I do think this is an important subject that we should all think about in some way. So as always, thanks for being a listener of the podcast. Thanks for sharing it and writing reviews. If you haven't done that already, it helps other people to find the podcast as well. Would love it if you give us a rating or review wherever you listen to this, and to share it with your friends, to spread the word about the podcast. So thanks as always. This has been another episode of Hold Fast, and I hope you have a great week. God bless.